I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, podcast listeners. This is Mac Payne here with episode 2920 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast, where we bring you news about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this episode, I will continue my crusade to pay tribute to Vietnam veterans who received the Congressional Medal of Honor while serving in Vietnam. I do this because I have to. I have to help make sure the names and deeds of these heroes are forever remembered, as long as there is a USA, because these people served their country so well. Many gave their life in the process of serving their country in Vietnam, made the ultimate sacrifice. It was a terrible thing because most of them were just starting out in their lives. I also share these stories with you to prove a point often made on this podcast. The Vietnam veteran generation is as great as any that ever heeded the call of duty from our country. Take that, all you anti-war protesters. It's the truth. In this episode, I'm going to tell you the sad story of Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr. He served in Vietnam with my old unit, 101st Airborne Division. He was assigned to the headquarters troop, 2nd Squadron, 17th Cav Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. He was involved in an action in Quang Thanh Province, where he gave his life for his country. Quang Thanh Province was up north, where the city of Tam Kỳ was located. I'm familiar with Tam Kỳ, drove through there many times on my first tour with the 4th Infantry Division. It was a rough area. And that's where Guy LaPointe found himself on that day in 1969. He was born on July the 2nd in 1948, and he died on his birthday, July the 2nd, 1969, at the young age of 20. Guy LaPointe Jr. was a wonderful young man. It was a terrible thing that he had to leave us so early. I'm going to share a story with you about Guy LaPointe that appeared on the International Peace Museum website. Whoever wrote this story did a good job describing the personality of the young man and the heroic actions he took in Vietnam to try and save his fellow soldiers. The title of this story is simply Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr. Before I begin sharing it with you, I ask that you pay your respects to his memory by listening carefully to the story I'm going to tell you about him. The best way to do that is to get rid of all the noisemakers in your immediate vicinity, look around the room, find the most comfortable chair, sit yourself down in that chair, remove your headgear, and listen carefully to his story. Might be a good idea to have a box of Kleenexes nearby. You just might need them. In a way, it's a sad story. With that in mind, let's take a look at it. Dateline, Dayton, Ohio. Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr. was born on July the 2nd, 1948 in Dayton. While a student at Northridge High School, he volunteered at the Allwood Audubon Center. Guy loved nature and enjoyed hiking and camping. He planned to go to college and earn a degree in biology. His goal was to work for the National Park System, the National Audubon Society, or the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Concerned about the social and political issues of the day, Guy supported the civil rights movement. After graduating from high school in 1966, Guy and his family moved to Clayton, Ohio. As a young adult, he took a job as a mail carrier with the post office in Englewood, Ohio. In 1968, having already applied to several colleges with hopes of pursuing his dream, Guy was drafted. In May, he reported for duty with the U.S. Army. On reporting, he declared himself to be a conscientious objector. About 3 months later, he married his sweetheart, Cindy Fowler of Dayton, Ohio. Guy became a combat medic. He completed his advanced training at the Army Medical Training Center at Fort Sam Houston, Texas. As a combat medic, Guy's role was to treat and defend soldiers wounded in battle. In November of 1968, Guy deployed to Vietnam, serving with the famed 101st Airborne Division. This light infantry division is known as the Screaming Eagles. Its members had participated in the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. In 1957, under orders from President Dwight D. Eisenhower, they ensured the safety of the Little Rock Nine, the first group of African American students enrolled in Little Rock Central High School, following the U.S. Supreme Court's 1954 decision in Brown versus Topeka Board of Education. 10 weeks after his deployment, Guy's wife gave birth to a son, Joseph Guy LaPointe III. Less than 5 months after his son's birth, an act of bravery cost Guy his life. It was June the 2nd, 1969. Guy's unit had come under fire. During the initial assault, 2 men in his unit were seriously wounded. They called for aid, and Guy did not hesitate. To reach them, he had to crawl through an area under heavy fire and within full view of an enemy bunker. With his unit providing him as much cover as possible, Guy shielded the wounded men with his body and began administering first aid. A burst of fire struck Guy, but he continued to treat the 2 wounded men. He was hit a second time and knocked to the ground. With considerable effort, he managed to crawl back to the wounded men and shield them from incoming fire. Sadly, a grenade mortally wounded all 3 men. In 1971, Guy was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor for his efforts. Although opposed to war, Guy had still been willing to go above and beyond the call of duty to heal and preserve life. Many places around the nation have been named in recognition of Guy's heroism. Those include a medical heliport at Fort Benning, Georgia, an Army Reserve Center in Riverside, Ohio, and the Health Center in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Also, a portion of Ohio State Route 49 in Montgomery County has been designated the Joseph G. LaPointe Jr. Memorial Highway. LaPointe's widow and son were presented with the Medal of Honor flag during a ceremony at the LaPointe Army Reserve Center in Riverside. There you have the story of another outstanding Vietnam War hero, Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr. Even though he did not believe in fighting in wars, when his country called, he answered. He served in a position that fit well with his status as a conscientious objector. And when the time came, he acted heroically. America is extremely fortunate to have people like Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr., who, even though being a conscientious objector, he answered the call of duty from his country, and he performed very well. On behalf of a grateful nation and all of our fellow Vietnam veterans, I hereby issue Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr. an official Vietnam Veteran News Podcast salute. I urge everyone listening here to go over to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. Check out episode 2920, and there you will see an image of young Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr., and you can just tell from that picture he was a wonderful individual. Joseph Guy LaPointe Jr., you were and still are a great one. Rest in peace, sir. That is my opinion, and I am sticking to it. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 2920 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News. Again, thank you very much for listening. Guy LaPointe, this is for you.